Okay, so the idea here is to look at some basic selection tools, because you use selection tools in Photoshop for all manner of things. It might be so that you can select something to get rid of it because you don't want it. It might be because you want to make some adjustments to a particular area, or it might be because you want to cut something out and put it somewhere else, perhaps put it on a different background. And people tend to get stuck in just a few of the very simple tools and don't necessarily explore all the range of options available with them. So I'll just do some of the simple stuff, and we'll see if I can suggest some things that you might find helpful. And okay, if you've got any questions as I go, just fire away. So let's get to something. So we'll open a picture to start off with. Now, in a lot of what, yeah. This was in the Florida Keys in February. We just managed to get a holiday before all this went pear-shaped. So I'm only using this as an example of just something to select. So if I wanted to select this penguin, there are lots of different ways to do this. The selection tools are up on the left here, and you've got what's known as the marquee tools, which give you regular shapes that you can use to go around something. And you don't very often use them. But the ones that most people use sit in this box, which is the lasso, the polygonal lasso, and the magnetic lasso. I think for a lot of people, the polygonal lasso is probably the one that a lot of people use. And this is the one where you just go round clicking like so to do a selection. It's a bit of a painstaking way to do things, but to a lot of newcomers, it's a simple way of doing it. And you end up with a selection like so. Now the magnetic lasso would be more appropriate for this one because it tries to follow an edge. Not doing it very well here. But as you can see, as I move along, it tries to stick to where it sees an edge. And then every time I click, it puts an anchor down. And for some subjects that are very well defined, then that could be a good way to do a selection. Let's just get rid of that. Now, to get rid of a selection, if you just want to cancel it, the easiest way is Control D, or I think it's Option D if you're using a Mac. So that's those. The lasso tool is another one that just draws as soon as you left click and can be useful for quick selections. But for a tool, for a selection like this one, you're better off using the automated tools that are built into Photoshop. So the latest one is called the Object Selection tool and is by far and away the most powerful and the simplest. Because if you just click on this and you just draw a box very crudely around the thing you want to select, like so. And Photoshop will then go away and do its best to select that object. Okay.
Does it need pictures with a strong contrast though, Mike?
It doesn't have to be. It does a remarkably good job, but the stronger the contrast, the easier it finds it to do.
Thank you.
So you can see it hasn't done it properly because in the gaps in the wings, it hasn't gone all the way in. But it is a quick way to do a selection. And what I find I do when I'm doing selections is I use a tool like this to make most of the selection, and then I use the other tools to refine that selection. Okay. Now, the other tool up here, automated one, which is very good, let me just cancel this, is to go to the quick selection tool. Now that's been around for a very long time now. And you've got if you look at my cursor, you will see that it's a circle that's expanding at the moment because this is a brush. Now you change the size of the brush by pressing the square brackets keys. So the left square bracket reduces the size of the brush, right square bracket increases the size of the brush. And all you do with this is just to paint, and everything you paint becomes part of the selection. And you'll see that it automatically grows from where you paint. So it assumes that everything that's the next color that I touch, it wants selected, so it goes off and does it. So you can see just painting across like that. So I need to go up here. Now, if you do something daft like that and you go over the edge, you can unselect it by pressing the Alt key. This applies to all the selection tools. They unselect if you press and hold the Alt key. So if I now come back and paint, you will see it's now unselecting those bits where I went wrong. Okay. So you can keep going like this. And what I would do is I would zoom in at this point. So I'm much closer to do selections. And the way to zoom in is to hold the Z key down and move the mouse. Left click and move the mouse. And you can move in and out like that. The other really useful tool when you're doing selections is the space bar. If you press the space bar, the hand comes up so you can drag the thing around. So you can zoom to move in quickly, and then the space bar to move around. So when you're getting close like this, it then becomes much easier to tidy up the selection. Okay.
That's good. Yeah.
And so I'm pressing when I'm outside the selection, I'm pressing the Alt key to deselect that bit. And when I'm inside what I want, I just leave the Alt key unpressed. And you can gradually improve the selection like that. You can do the same thing here. So if I make the brush smaller, I can paint up that feather to gradually get that in, and then I can press the Alt key and go back in here to take that out and reduce in my brush size so I can get in the small areas. Okay. Go up here. Made a bit of a mess of that. So this isn't necessarily the best tool to do all this fine stuff with, but I'm just showing you how you can do it. So if I zoom out again, so what else have we got we could use to help with these selections? Well, the tool that's in most of the later Photoshops that is really very useful is Select and Mask up the top here. So if you press Select and Mask, whoops, I just need to move you a bit. Okay, so you get this new panel up here, and up the top here, you can see your selection against different backgrounds. And you can then go in and tidy up your selection. So we can zoom in again. So if we get the zoom control here and zoom in. Now the tool here that's really, really useful is the one up here called the Refine Edge brush. And with this, what you do is you paint over the edge like so. And you put the cross in the center of that circle on the edge, and you will see what it's doing. It's working out what it is you want to keep and what you're not bothered about. And as you paint over, it's improving the selection all the time. And here you can do the minus key works as well. So you press the Alt key and paint down through there, and you can improve that. So we're getting there. So you can see it's a bit painstaking, but just by brushing over the edges, what you're doing all the time is you're telling Photoshop where the edge is, and it's recalculating where it's putting the selection. So you just find anywhere that it's not quite right and just paint over it again. So this is probably the most effective tool, because you literally paint over the edge and it then works out which bits it's going to keep and which bits it's going to drop. It's getting a bit confused with that pattern. So here we go. So it does quite a good job on the details. So in not very long at all, we've got a pretty decent selection there. One thing you might find helpful when you're doing selection is these marching ants all the time often are disturbing, and you can hide them without changing the selection. If you press Control H, then they disappear, but the selection is still there. So if you're adjusting levels or something like that, you can see the changes without being distracted by the marching ants around the edge.
How do you bring them back?
Just press H again. Oh,
Thank
Control H again. It's like a toggle.
Okay, thank you.
Turns it on and off. Now, if you want to soften the edge of your selection, you can obviously use the feather tool over here. And that just adds a small feather, or as much as you like, to the selections to give you a softer edge. Because sometimes if you're cutting things out to put them on somewhere else, if the edge is too hard, it just looks cut out. So if you've got
where's the feather kit?
Just over here, look, on the right. Can you see me?
No.
Can you not see the panel on the right?
Yeah, yeah.
Be in touch again, I'm sure.
No, I can't see anything on the right. Hang on, I'll move the screen.
Yeah, you've got your screen wrong, Mike, I think.
No, I see
Yeah.
it.
Go down to 50%. Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, 50% brings it in, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the panel. And when you've finished your selection and you're happy with it, and that's not a bad selection on there, when you go down to the output settings, you can decide how you want this selection to be treated. So you can have it just come out as a selection, in which case the image looks exactly like this with the dotted lines around it, a selection that you can then deal with. Or you can have it as a layer mask or a new layer, a layer with a layer mask. I tend to do selections with a layer mask because then you can tinker with the mask to improve the selection. But if we said we just wanted it to go as a selection, and we hit OK, there we go. We're back to our original picture, but with a selection around it. And so then if we wanted to do anything like, say, adjust the brightness of this, this bird, perhaps we want to do something to lighten up the underneath of the wings a bit, then we could just alter this. Wrong way. And you can make some adjustments like that. This is where it helps to use Control H to hide the dotted lines, because then when you're making adjustments, you can see the picture properly, so you can make a better judgment as to how far you can go without it looking odd. Okay. So that's basically the way I do most of my selections. The object select tool is the latest and a good place to start because it works really well. But the quick selection tool, I often find, is the fastest way to get to your first cut of the selection, if you like, and then go into select and mask to then do the fine tuning and using the refining edge brush to tidy up all the edges. And that way you can get some quite detailed selections quite quickly. Okay.
Do you want to mention inversion, inverting the selection?
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is something you might find useful if you actually wanted to darken down the sky here. The easiest way to do it is to select the bird quite quickly and then go up to select and then inverse. So now it's selected all the sky. So if I go to adjustments and levels, then if I
Change the background.
just altering the sky,
Yeah.
and again, if you do the Control H to take the marching ants off. Oops. Oh, somewhere went a bit weird then. Oh, that's shot in. Yeah, yeah. If you take the marching ants off, you get a much better view as to the effect you're having and how far you can push it before it looks too much. And again, just Control H puts the marching ants back on so you can see what's selected. The other thing you can do with the selection, of course, is you can save it. So if you're doing a particularly complicated selection and you want to take a break from it and come back to it, then if you go up here to the selection panel, you'll have to get out of this, up to the select menu, then you can save your selection and load it in again later. And it might be you're doing several different versions of something. So you want to, instead of keep selecting the subject, you can save and load selections from there.
Brilliant.
Okay.
That's good. Yeah.
So I don't want to load you up with too much. Is that okay? Is that
Yeah.
helpful?
It's something to practice, isn't it?
Yeah. Very useful.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Do you know if Elements have got all of those tools?
They've got most of those tools. They won't have the object selection tool, but it has got quick selection,
Yeah.
which is the most useful. And I'm pretty sure, depending on which version you've got, I think it's got the select and mask panel or something very similar. I haven't got a copy of Elements at the moment, which is a bit of a nuisance. I could do with getting one actually.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay, I'll stop that recording.